Good afternoon. My name is Javier Martin, and I would like to go over all the scripts that I used for my Tic Tac Toe game. So let me go over them quickly because I am encountering a time issue with my explanations. So the first thing, let me just put the game on here so you can see how it works. There's a grid. You can move the boxes and you can select the boxes, and it switches to the two players. And there's a win condition for one player, and there's a win condition for the other player. So you can see X's are about to win, and it draws this screen here, and then you can go ahead and press yes to restart. So let me go over the code quickly. I created two block scripts, and those were tied into cube objects with materials on them. One was red, the other one was green. Those were going to be my player controllers. And as you can see, block one, the red one, basically got keys, different keys, and did standard just transform translates on them on update, so you could gather that get key from the player. For the actual trigger volumes, there were 9. This is just the first box, so there's an empty trigger, and I attached this script to it that basically just says if you're the player, which was player 1, that's the player 1 tag. I created another tag for player 2. So if you're player 1, you go inside the trigger on stay, and you press E with X active and O active being false. That's meeting the conditions that nothing has happened yet in this box. Go ahead and set this game object, which was the X that I made for when red goes in there, to true, and go ahead and deactivate player 1, and then do a Thread.Sleep. This I got out of this tutorial. That's the only tutorial that I used for Tic Tac Toe, and it's basically, I used it because I was encountering an issue where if I did go ahead and press E, it would run on stay all the way down to here, and it would do 2 at once. With this delay, it now works great. I imagine there's a better way of doing it, but for Tic Tac Toe, it worked great for me. So then I would just set this boolean to true after deactivating player 1. And I set empty to false. Empty's condition was only used for the draw condition. I made sure that nothing is empty, and once all the empties are false and none of the win conditions have been met, then you draw. That's how I did draw. So let me go into the winning conditions. It's a huge line of text, a lot of repetition. So let me just go through the beginning and the very end, which are the most important. So basically it says if trigger 1 X is active, which is what we just went through. That's that boolean that I set to true. If trigger 2 is set to active and trigger 3 X active, those are if the X's have been there and have pressed E, then X wins is set to true. Well, that's that screen that says, hey, X has won. And X winner is true. And then I go ahead and deactivate both players, and I say I use the conditions to see if you want to restart the game or just quit it. I did that for all the X's, and I went ahead and did that for all the O's. And then lastly came the draw. And draw was basically, hey, if all of these are not empty, if empties are not true, meaning that they're false, meaning that something has happened in all these triggers, and there are no winning conditions. So see how we established that this is true when the winning conditions are met? So if there are no winners yet, then go ahead and bring up the draw condition. That way I established that you can actually not meet all of these conditions and still have another condition called draw. That's how I went about doing that. And one thing I noticed is that my players were going through the actual board. So what I did for that, let me show it to you. You can move through here, and as soon as you get into the outer rim, you go right to the beginning of it. I used a respawn player script for that. So I created triggers all around the edges here, and I went ahead and put this script on those triggers and said if you're selector player 1, that's the name of the game object, either for 1 or 2. If you touch those triggers, then go ahead and disable the renderer and get the rigid body velocity and set it to 0. And then go ahead and transform its position back to the respawner position, which was an empty game object that I created and I put right here, and then enable the renderer again. So that's how I did Tic Tac Toe. I hope you enjoyed it. I used a lot of logic from scraps, which are my two. I've been working on those projects, and it seems to be working great. I hope you enjoyed it.